Make that big boss less special. It ain't no game, but they saying welcome to the second level. Second level. Second level gaming. Second level.
Honor and Duty has a long and storied history when it comes to its VR implementation. Way back in 2016, Strange Games, a micro studio from Atlanta, Georgia, released the original version of Honor and Duty for PlayStation 4 to not much fanfare. It would appear that any reviewers who did bother to touch it would universally pan it, expecting it to be somewhat of a parody of the genre, rather than just a super mediocre World War II FPS game. In 2017, Strange Games started to look into the VR medium to see what kind of work they could do there. Turns out, one of the best places to start was with one of their older titles. The initial conversion to VR for Honor and Duty would appear to have been a struggle for the small studio. Strange Games would often tweet out that they had been declined by the QA testing program for Sony. To their credit, they would always give great explanations as to why they were declined, and always seemed more determined than ever to push forward with fixes and retry. Earlier this year, they finally got the big okay from Sony and released a VR patch for Honor and Duty. So, was it all worth it? I wish I had a straight answer for you, but the truth is more complicated. As much as I hate to say it, Honor and Duty did not have the best base game to create something truly special in VR from. I think, as an exercise for the company to help get their heads around the VR process, it was a great idea. The final product, however, is left wanting. There is a decent selection of movement options, and I experienced no motion sickness at any point in play. However, I am not the best measuring stick for that type of thing. I was pleased at the smoothness though. In my playtime, I used the aim controller, and the implementation of that was well done. The game can also be played with the DS4, but honestly, if you're gonna do it, it's worth using the aim. Where the game really suffers, honestly, is in a very basic game sense. It's just not very good. Those words sting a little to say because I like to think every game has its merits, and certainly there are a few redeeming features here, but the base game from which this VR iteration was made manifest is just too far below the standard expected today from video game developers. VR definitely makes the game better, quite significantly so. Even bearing that in mind, there is not a lot of joy to latch onto here. The single-player campaign is just a wave-based shooter where ugly enemy AI spawn from ridiculous locations over and over until a set amount of them is dead. Sometimes you're pushing a point, sometimes protecting one. Your teammates stand around not doing much of anything as you take on hordes of the same 4 soldiers over and over again. It gets boring pretty fast. The weapons are so-so. No frills, no scopes or anything fancy. They do feel pretty good to use in VR though. Similar to the guns in Rec Room if you're looking for a general idea of the feeling. Where most of us were really hoping for it to shine though, was in its 5 vs 5 online multiplayer deathmatch mode. Even this though, seems to be already suffering. A mere week or so into the game's release, I hopped on hoping to get a decent match. Out of the several attempts I made, I got one match, one time, with one other guy. The rest of the time I was just staring at a no games found screen in disappointment. I'm not suggesting this will be everyone's experience, I can only speak to mine. But in the one game I did get to play, the map was uninspired, and the fact I had to buy ammo was a little ridiculous. It just wasn't fun. This whole review hurts a little to write because not only are we huge promoters of the indie development teams here at Level 2, but we really wanted this game to succeed so badly. The first real online team-based multiplayer FPS in VR, this was supposed to be a crowning achievement for the platform. Instead, it just left me wondering how much better things could have been if perhaps the team had started from scratch in VR, knowing what we know now after a year's worth of releases for the medium. The good news, I suppose, is that the experiment of learning how to make a VR game seems to have driven Strange Games on. They are working on a D-Day variant of the Honor and Duty title as a true sequel. I'll have my fingers crossed that they take this and other feedback well and have chance to focus more on polish, gameplay, and fun, and less on the technical side of things. Thanks for watching.